Hello everyone and welcome back to Phoenix Gaming. Today we are about to tackle Splendor. It's a pretty hot and popping game, a little bit of a shorter game today. A couple of things before we even get started today. So first of all, if you are interested in attending the World Series of Board Gaming, you can use the code Phoenix. Details are down below, and you can sign up for the event yourself if you're interested in coming and seeing what it looks like in Vegas, what it plays like in Vegas in October this year or the end of September. I don't remember exactly the dates off the top of my head. I'll have to look that up for next time. Also, this time, shout out again to Hawkeye Programming Jim, who also noticed my difficulties, my comments about the difficulties staying on top of this game and just kind of the combination of the glare and the pieces that are moving around. He went ahead and again set up this wonderful Excel sheet for us at the bottom. I'll talk briefly about its structure. So in the left, right, kind of like the various corners, you'll see Michael, who's our first player. He's in the top left. He's a player all the way on the left on the screen. And it will show essentially like the cards on the left there and the gems that he has right next to that. If you move over to the right a little bit, you'll see where it says Gray. You maybe recognize Gray from some of our other videos. He's the second gentleman in the hat. He is in seat 2. Moving down from Gray, we see Wei. Wei is going from left to right on my screen. He's a gentleman standing next to the judge who's in the red shirt, or he's sitting next to the judge who's in the red shirt. And then finally we have Levi in the 4th position, who we have also seen in the Terraforming Mars game before. So you'll be able to kind of follow their 4 sets there. In the middle, these very colorful things on the board tell you what cards are available in play right now. So for instance, in the top left, we see that there is a green card that is worth 4 victory points. And you might not be able to see it that well, but there is a blue 7 there that tells you that that's the cost of that card right there. On the left, you will see the pool of available chips. So currently 7 blues. Looks like Jim is from the school of calling those browns. I am almost certainly going to call them black. So black and brown are synonymous for this video. Just that's the way that it is. White, green, and red there. Followed by gold, of course, of which there's only 5 of them. And then all the way on the right, you can see the action that folks are taking in the given turn. So Michael's about to take his first action. He is going to take as his action. He is going to take 1 white, 1 green, and 1 red. And you can kind of see that on the right side of that Excel sheet right there. Numbers are a little bit small, but there's only so much we could do with the screen. I'm probably going to have to be moving this bad boy around a little bit anyway, but it will help guide me, and hopefully it will help guide you as we run through this game here. One last moment before we get kind of diving in here. I'm not going to talk too much about the rules of the game, but Splendor's a pretty straightforward game if you haven't played it before. The players are racing to 15 points. They do this by collecting various gems. There is a very limited number of gems, which is a huge part of the gameplay. As I said, there's 7 blues, 7 browns or blacks, 7 whites, 7 greens, 7 reds, and 5 gold gems. Each player can only hold 10 at a time, which is another really relevant rule that comes up a lot. And on your turn, you can either take gems, you can either buy something, or you can reserve a card. In general, I have heard, I'm a mediocre Splendor player. I've heard that for the most part, this feels like an engine building game that you're supposed to take gems and build things. When you have a card, it gives you that resource permanently. So if I bought a red card, I'll always get an additional red for future purchases, or really a better way of viewing it as a red discount on future purchases. But from what I understand, actually kind of drilling towards those top high value cards is kind of one of the premier strategies. So we're going to see if the players at this table who had to work their way through many opponents. This was the most popular game at the event, in large part because on the first day they only had 2 events, and one of them was Splendor. And so I believe each of these gentlemen won 4 games of this already to get here, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's right. And we have Wei starting off by taking a couple resources, a red, a white, and a green here. Let me move this just briefly so you can look at the bottom there. And you can see that red, white, and green are pretty prevalent amongst those bottom row resources right there. You can also see that in the spreadsheet here. If you look at the bottom, that one red card costs 4 whites, that green one costs 3 reds, and so on and so forth. So it looks like he's kind of setting up for that. Gray, on the other hand, is going to take a reserve action. Looks like he is reserving. Well, we missed the card that he's reserving. That's pretty significant. Let me see if I can bounce back for a second and see what he's reserving. Can we see? The card that he's going to take is impactful because, first of all, you get a gold with it. Gold's a wild resource, so reserving right off the bat can be really powerful and saying, you know what, I want to take this resource, or I want to take this card with the plan of building it ultimately, but also taking this wild resource at the beginning is totally viable. In a lot of games, taking this kind of like reserve action ends up not being that powerful. In Splendor, I think it is actually quite important to take that. I accidentally reversed back to Michael's turn, so we'll see if we can catch what Gray grabbed. The reason I want to be cognizant of what he grabbed is because whatever he ends up grabbing will probably imply what kinds of gems he's going to be looking for, and his opponents are going to be paying close attention to that because they're going to want to deny him from getting those gems. So suppose, for instance, he took that top right card, the 4 victory point red card that wants 7 greens. He's going to need to stack up piles and piles of greens, and if his opponents prevent him from doing that or make it a hassle for him to do that, he will never be able to build that card. So that's one of the things that's risky about reserving at the beginning. I personally would be, we're going to see what he took. It's kind of, they have this like funky video covering this other video thing, so they might update it in a moment here to see if we can tell what he took. Yeah, I don't know. Here we go. Date updated it. Maybe Jim got it. Let's advance the game and see what happens. Okay. So he took that second one at the top there, the red 5 that costs 7 blues and 3 greens. That's an interesting choice. He chose the one that was just maximal victory points. He said he doesn't really care too much about, okay, and then there's a replace to refill. I see, okay. He doesn't care too much about what he needs to do to get there. He just wants to maximize the number of points that he's going to do to get there. All right, and it looks like Wei also is going to go ahead and reserve. This is pretty common, I think, amongst players. There's only so much gold that can be grabbed, so if you're going to reserve, there's kind of a gold rush for it, as it were. Wei is going to, which one's he replacing here? Looks like he actually just took the one that just flipped out there. So he took that big 5-pointer guy as well. Or no, maybe he didn't. We're going to figure out what they took along the way. And we'll just stick with it. I don't want to get too pulled aside by this. And then it looks like Levi also went ahead and reserved. And one thing, okay, so Levi actually did take a card that I thought maybe was one of the spicier cards. So the card that he ended up taking was 6 blacks for 3 points. Those ones kind of in the middle row there, I think are a smidge easier to build than the ones at the top row. And there's not necessarily, there wasn't at the time, a lot of other people that wanted black discs at the time. So these players are kind of trying to move into colors that, I think Levi is moving into colors that he doesn't think that the other players are necessarily going to be taking. And while I couldn't even see what cards it is that these players took, or it's just hard for me to follow exactly, the players at this table are going to be paying a lot of attention to what folks did. Looks like Gray is reserving a bottom row card. Yes, he's reserving the bottom row card, green card, that only costs 3 red resources. He is choosing that one because it's a cheaper one, right? It's one of the better ones that he has in play. He's also just saying, hey, I'll keep on taking these greens. That is probably a bummer for Wei to see, who had collected 2 greens, 2 reds, 2 whites. So he would have been happy for that to roll around. I think it's probably not so likely that these players would do that. And it's really interesting that Wei, I think a lot of times in first position, you see players doing exactly this: reserve, reserve, reserve around the table. If all 4 players reserve, then Michael, then Michael's in the position, it's Wei's turn, where he could have reserved twice and gotten 2 gold, where everyone else only did it once. But because he has decided to pass on that, the other players at the table, now Gray and Wei, are walking away with 2 gold. So I think that Michael is probably trying to get out to an aggressive start here and grab some resources, start kind of focusing on the engine building side of the game. One of the ways that you can kind of say, okay, well, if everyone is going to kind of go reserving, and that's kind of the like meta strategies that folks are going to be like reserving throughout the course of the game, then if I engine build, you guys can butt heads with each other. I can kind of block you. I could take the resources that you most need or most interested in. And now we're kind of in a position where reserving is not really going to be an option. And so Levi here is really interested in collecting probably a ton of blacks so he could play his card. But that being said, taking just 2 blacks is less efficient than taking, 3 diverse things. So he's going to go ahead and choose to take a black, a blue, and a white here. There's a lot of cards that want white on them. The blue choice is an interesting one. I'm maybe looking at that one in the bottom right that takes 3 blues to build the white card. So it could be that he's kind of angling on building that one while no other player has any blue gems. That's my thinking of his taking of that piece right there. White gives him some options, and then of course black has a couple options. Well, first of all, the one in his hand that costs 6, and then in the middle row there we see there's one that costs 5. Okay, Michael is going to go ahead and for the first time diversify his resources. He's going to copy Levi's move here. That's his 3rd white, which tells me he is, well, I suspect he's hoping to get the 4th white so he can get that bottom left one, that red one, because it's 1 victory point that costs 4 whites. Levi is going to focus very heavily on his game plan. He's taking 2 reds here. One thing he can ultimately do with 2 reds is he could do 2 reds and a gold if he wanted to pay for that white card in the bottom row, in the 2nd spot of the bottom row. But if he was going to do that, he would have taken a black, a red, and something else. So to me, that's signaling he's not interested in that. I don't entirely remember which cards he's put in reserve because we're commenting 4 people. I should write them down or something if I even could. But maybe one of those cards actually required reds, and he's just focusing on rushing out essentially his resource there. Wei's going to follow suit with blue, so it's really interesting to see that Gray and Wei here have exactly kind of the same strategy. Like, we have both reserved 2 cards, one expensive one relatively cheaper one, and I think both of them are trying to play out their cheaper one early, while the getting's good, while they don't have to fight with other people. Here we see that Levi is going to go ahead and collect some black tokens here. I wonder why he jumped out of the blue plan. I wonder if it's because other people took blue discs. Like, the fact that he went white, blue, black last turn and then took double black here indicates something. I'm just not entirely sure what it indicates. And I missed, of course, that Michael had the perfect resources to buy that 2nd row one at the bottom. So he's going to start the game with the first purchase of anybody. And if you'll notice on Michael's board on the left, we see that he has 1 white card available to him and 3 gems. So now he's got 4 white gems, which means that if that red one flips around, he's going to be buying that on his next turn, which is pretty nice. Gray kind of goes for a diverse pull here. That's probably because he can't pull. I don't think well, maybe there were enough reds to buy 2, but maybe he only needs the 3 of them, and he gets more resources this way. Wei does the same thing, copying his blues from before, and then Levi goes really quickly and reiterates his first play from before. And this is common. Players like kind of taking the same resources repeatedly is where you want to be as a player. And then Michael could have bought that card, but interestingly enough, he actually takes resources instead. And we're just whipping around really quickly at this point. Oops, did I move too fast? I must have moved too fast. I'll pause for a second. Oh yeah, I did move too fast. So Levi's going to take resources here. And then we see that Michael takes resources instead of buying the thing that he absolutely has the resources to buy. The reason he's doing that is because the resources are running low. Notice how there's no blue gems left. I think that's the last white gem that's there, the last black-brown gem that's there. And so he's saying, well, you know what? No one else has enough whites to buy the card that I want to buy. So why rush it? I should actually contest the resource that is in contestation right now, which is the actual gems on the left side, not the cards in the middle of the board. And he's not too worried that anybody's going to reserve that card out from underneath him because there's no gold to be had. Now, players still could reserve, but that's not a really good tempo play. I mean, they only get the card in their hand that they then kind of want to commit towards building later. So unless they were like, unless that's an absolutely amazing like win on the spot card, which it definitely isn't, for a player to do that without taking a gold is insanely aggressive, suicidally aggressive, maybe even. And for what's like a really simple game, you see these players can like really stop and they're trying to figure out what's happening, because this game is, I think, deeply chess-like at the high levels. What's nice about Splendor is it's very easy to just be like, I'm going to get some gems because I'm planning on building towards that thing. But because there are multiple shared pools in this game, the shared pool of cards, the shared pool of resources that are quite limited, players have a big incentive to really plan out what the next few rounds are going to look like for them, not just kind of like taking what's in front of you, which is why Michael is sitting there thinking, like, what is it that I want to buy? To the point that he is taking an extra white resource here, saying, you know what, I have a white discount. I'm going to keep taking white discs, doing something with that. Gray then cashes in those reds, and maybe a gold as well, or maybe, no, he just had 3 reds to play that green card, that he had reserved earlier on. So that makes sense. I think Wei's card did not cost 3. Oh, but he could buy, he's got 3 blues. He could buy that one in the bottom right, which I think is what he's debating right now. The fact that he's got his hands so tightly on those chips, I suspect that's what he's doing. The reason that he's not, I think, just slam buying that, even though he's kind of moved towards that, I suspect, is because he sees that Michael is kind of like hoarding white chips and has a white discount, and he's maybe asking himself, like, do I want to get into a contest with this other player? I already kind of have these commitments in my hand. You don't need to build the cards in your hand by the end of the game, but you don't want to fill your hand up to a full 3 cards and be stuck, unable to take actions at a later kind of mid stage of the game where you're low on resources, you have expensive cards in your hand that you're not planning on playing. So it's not like he wants to just keep reserving. Like, he needs to start building some infrastructure here. And he is maybe also going kind of with the Michael consideration here, where he says, you know what? The resources are super dry right now. I can take something. I think this will actually put him at 11 chips. Because, no, maybe not. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2. I think it maybe did put him at 11 chips, and he only took 2. Oh, no, because he took 2 one turn. Right. So because he took a gold and a gold, That's 2. Then he took a single action to take 2. That's 4. And then he took 3 and then 3. That puts him at 10. There we go. So because the resources are so dried right now, he did exactly the Michael strategy. He collected some gems before buying that thing in the bottom right, saying to himself, you know what? I don't think that other players are going to buy this. If they are, I'm okay with it. Players that could buy it are Levi, who's sitting on 2 blue gems and a gold. And he's there thinking about it. He's like, can I see how many gems you have? I would like to see if you have the 3 blue gems, please. This looks like it might be a buy for Levi. Oh, I have the information in advance already. So he is going to pay the 2 blues and the gold there to scoop up that thing, which Wei could have taken, but Wei decided to let it rest. And so instead we get flipped out with... replace something? There we go. We get flipped out with something that would reward someone who's got a pile of green tokens. This is an interesting game in that a bunch of cheap stuff is flipping at the bottom. That card in the second spot there, that like green 1, 2 whites, 1 red, 1 blue. Those cards I think kind of don't work very well because they're more expensive. Just in terms of raw quantity of chips that you need to play. They, I think, in theory, are supposed to be cheaper because it's easy to build many different colors of things, get those discounts, and then end up paying very little for a card like that. Whereas, you know, you see the card directly to its left that only costs 4 white chips, costs 1 because getting the same chips is very difficult. People can contest them. There might be just a limited number of that particular color of chips. So the game has a very interesting math around having the same color of chips rewards you more if you have a way to spend it. So Michael reserved something. What did he take? He took that top left guy that was just 7, I think it was blue resources for 4 victory points. And then Gray grabbed a couple tokens. He's just kind of juicing up here. And now we're back to Wei, who has put himself into kind of funny position here. Looks like he goes and reserves something. Well, that's just fascinating. Because there's... What? Is that true? He just reserved something off the top of the deck? Huh. No gold resource. He must be just completely stymied here. I guess he really didn't think that Levi was going to buy that card. I mean, his body language to me right now is saying that he's in trouble, right? Hand covering face. I do that when I'm concerned, so that could be the case. Wow, that could have really hosed him. That's so interesting. And then Levi grabbing 3 chips here, just all sorts of different colors, because that's essentially what's available at this stage, right? The players, there's only red available. The players are like capped out on the number of chips that they have. Gray's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wei's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's at 10. Gray, Levi's at 7, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, we've got like 7, 8s, 10s. And I think the game state often gets this way in 4 players where the whole pool of resources is just dried up. And then players are kind of like awkwardly bumbling towards being able to build something. That can happen a lot at the beginning of this game, until someone kind of like breaks and buys something that like maybe is not the most ideal purchase. Right now, Michael has a lot of options. He's got 3 greens. He's got 4 whites. I think he's going to buy the thing that costs 3 greens, the black card, because Gray could buy it, but I am wrong because he's a lot more interested in buying, cashing in the whites here that he needs to cash in and buying that one that we knew he would be taking for a while, right? That red one that's worth 1 victory point. flips out something new in the bottom left there, something with a little bit of a rainbow of options right there. And then gray is going to go ahead and buy something that costs a red and 2 gold. Looks like he's buying, he's buying the brand new card that flipped out. That's interesting. So he's buying a 1/1/1 with 2 gold pieces. I think there's 2 reasons that he's doing this. One is there's not a lot of resources to take right now. He has very limited options of what he can do. Using your gold to pay for a rainbow pickup, like he's picking up that one in the bottom left there, red, green, white, black, brown, is not what you want your gold to be doing. You want your gold to be doing like, I'm buying 5 blacks or 6 blues or whatever. But this table, I think, has quite the contest when it comes to needing blues from the cards they reserved, if I've followed that correctly. And let me just fix Gray's name here. Somehow he slid over. Gray's name. Gray. Okay, there we go. Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so then Wei finally gets to buy something as well. Looks like he's buying the brand new card that flipped out. So he got himself a black resource. And really funny, this can happen in these lurches, right, where players are kind of like, they've maximized their capacity. There's no more resources to be had. And then Michael buys something, flips something. Gray says, all right, I'll buy that. He buys something. And then Wei bought the thing outright from underneath him. So they're buying the stuff that's flipping into play that they like. This next one that we flipped cost 5. So Levi doesn't seem quite as excited about that option. But now, even though he's at 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, is he at 11? Must be something wrong there. I'm sure he discarded one of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7. Oh, he has got 1 blue resource. So he's got 9. So he got 9 resources. So he's got room for an extra resource here. And he's going to go ahead and reserve something. He's going to reserve that bottom right resource, the one that costs the 3 gold. The 3 green, the cheap one. And that, I think, could have been a Michael purchase if he was interested. But if he really wanted to get it, he needed to buy it last turn when other folks couldn't really contest the white. And I guess Gray could have contested that one, right? He could have bought that one just as easily as the other one that he did buy, the blue one. But like we said, we think he's interested in blue as a, engine building structural resource to his setup. Whew. All right. So it looks like Michael's going to take here. That fits with generally like where he's at, right? He's got 7 gems. Why not cap out right now? Take what he needs to have. These kind of flush of greens here are a little awkward for him right now. That being said, I'm looking at the middle row and I'm seeing like 5 greens and 3 reds, or 4 greens, 2 reds, and a blue to buy something. And I think he's maybe angling in that direction next. And he just took another green and a red. So I think I'm right. He's going to probably buy one of those 2 black cards in the middle of the board. It's more likely that he's capped out. He's going to buy that 3rd one over in the 2nd row on his next turn. Gray reserves a card. So there's this kind of like, right, people have spent gold. So there's this like rush again to reserve. Let's see if we can figure out what he's reserving. I'm not sure what he's reserving. He reserved a card in the bottom left that I didn't quite see what it was, but something on the cheaper side. We'll have to see when he plays it. There's no way for me to go backwards a step. I'd have to reset the whole game and then go back to step 44. So we will actually, can I do this? I don't know what that is though. Okay. This is the one downside of Jim's amazing work here is that I can't get into the guts and and figure out exactly what his coding pattern was, because then he made it look all pretty here for me. Then it looks like Wei bought something for 2 blacks. So my guess is that bottom right one, 2 blacks and 2 other resources. No, he bought something from the second row. Oh. That thing that cost 5 black resources, he had 2 blacks, 2 gold, and a black resource. So, wow, yeah, that's really great for him. I felt like his game felt awkward that one turn, and like a stumble early in this game can really put you behind. But I don't know if this was his plan all along or if he just kind of found his way out of the place that he was in. We know that he flipped that black mine randomly off of Gray's turn, so he might have just kind of gotten back into the nice tempo of the game pretty smoothly. Oh, I've advanced too much. I get too hasty with my clicking. Great. Yeah, what a good pickup for him. I think he's like broke now though. Yeah, he's down to like no gems, so he's going to spend a few turns kind of like reconstituting his plan. He still seems like not so happy with his situation. I think that might be because he's got 3 cards in hand, and that stymies your options, right? He's not going to be taking reserve actions now. He's got to build something in his hand first if he wants to reserve for gold. So he's got to make things work with what he has in play, which is sounds like normal, but is actually surprisingly awkward in Splendor, particularly in this stage of the game where his like fundamental resource situation is not great. By the way, the reason that this like board in the middle keeps like blinking in and out, I think, is because the WSBG guys ran this at home. They like realized that the glare here is not very good, and so they did this at home and keep putting their video on and off. I find it distracting and hard to follow. I can't fix it or change that, so unfortunately I don't get to weigh in there, even though I can't really see these cards super well. So I appreciate what they did. I mean, the amount of extra work that they need to do to find the right resources, re-record the entire thing is extensive. And I'm sure it helped Jim put together this wonderful, wonderful spreadsheet. All right, Levi grabs a couple resources. He is now sitting at 5 blacks, 3 whites, a green, and a gold. And I think that he actually took resources to the point that he needs to discard at the end of his turn. But really what he was interested in was acquiring more black resources, because remember, he's got the 6 blacks for 3 victory points and a black gem card, which I'm sure is what he's angling for. The whites, well, you know, maybe he's going for that card on the left side of the middle row. That could be a possibility. But like, notice here, I think he took 3 gems and discarded 2. He might have even discarded 3. Like, he is trying to. There could be inefficiencies in your drawing in this game while you're trying to like execute what you're doing here. And then it looks like we're going to have Michael buy that card from the bottom left there, kind of just a basic resource with some reds and blues there, proving me wrong about that middle purchase. So these players, I think, are really focusing on like buying a couple things in the bottom row, and then they're going to like shoot straight to the top. Maybe they're not really focusing on middle building. I personally like building in the middle. Getting a couple decent points seems good to me for the kind of ratio that you're playing in the middle. And I don't think that they cost that much more often than the cards in the bottom row. But maybe these players know something I don't, right? Where they're going to kind of build their infrastructure at the beginning so they can then like spam a couple really heavy purchases later. Or just go super duper wide and focus on getting a a noble. Although with white, green, red, there's not a particular noble that's being grabbed here. All right, so Gray took some resources. Wei took some resources. Levi went ahead and purchased the card that we talked about earlier. Let me go ahead and move this briefly so you can take a look at it. That's this card right here. 6 blacks for a black resource. Let's see if I can move this. Like here, we don't need to see. Wei's hand. Yeah, and so Michael's just going to kind of bleed the well dry again. And you notice that, like, right, I mentioned at the kind of one of the earlier rounds that blue is a contested resource on this board. And if you remember all the way back at the beginning of the game, the players stared at this board for a really long time before taking their first actions. That's, I think, the kind of thing that these folks are assessing. They're looking around saying, look, what are the resources that people are going to be trying to get this game? They also know what resources people claimed in their hands and like where they're going with that. And if you look on the board right now, just even kind of a quick color glance on the like middle thing. Again, I'm looking at the Excel sheet here in the middle. Blues all over the place, right? So it's demanded kind of randomly in this instance. Gray is going to say, all right, well, I can't take a lot of different colors, so I'll grab some red chips. That's fine by me. Wei is going to do the same thing, but with black chips. Now it's Levi's turn, and there is very little left. However, there is gold, and so it looks like he's going to reserve. Oh, he's going to reserve a random card in just a second here. So reserving a random card means a couple of things. It says that he's not interested in taking excuse me, any of these cards in play. Which is interesting because, he's got a discount on black, he's got a discount on white. My instinct would be that you would take that card on the left side, but maybe he really wants something that makes more black or white to build towards the other cards in his hand, although the other card in his hand is a green card. Okay. So Michael was just being efficient with his previous purchase. He does eventually go towards the build that I had suggested there, that second row, third card. So that'll get flipped out. Oops, I clicked too many times. Gray purchases as well. That must have been the card from his hand that he reserved quite a while ago. Oh, and now I see why he reserved it. He reserved it because it is a blue card. He loves them blue cards. Wei, as we mentioned, spending a couple turns sort of rebuilding his financial empire here. He's collecting a lot of black tokens. He's got a black discount. So he might be aiming towards that card of the second row that I thought Levi maybe would have reserved. All right, and we are about to take action 60, which means we are 15 turns into the game. No, that can't be right because I think some of the count is replacing things. So probably more like a dozen or 13 turns into the game, something like that. Yeah, so I think Levi's maybe a little stymied here. The fact that he drew something random off the top means that he doesn't have a specific plan that he's trying to execute. He has a pile of whites here, but there are none left. So if he's not using these, what then? He might want to start grabbing some blues. Then he could get that like 5 white, 3 blues one. But there are no blues to have. So instead, he'll kind of take a little bit of a rainbow here. Collecting more of those black gems. Generally, you want to collect, if you're in a doubt, right, you'll collect gems of cards that you've already played, the things that you have discounts for, because again, the game rewards you generally for having gems of the same color. Those are the kind of generally tend to be the more efficient cards in terms of resource to point conversion. So for instance, that top left card that costs 10 gems, 7 greens and 3 reds is worth 5 points. That's a 2 gems to 1 point conversion, which is significantly better than those things in the middle row there, right? That's that first one in the middle row there is 8 gems for 2 points. So you can see right there that the ratio is significantly less. But easier to build. Michael has one of each different kind of card except for a blue card, which Gray has been really focusing on. And to me, well, each of these players kind of has something going on. So Michael's got a lot of different resources, which is going to make it so that it's easier for him to buy other stuff. And he's sitting here thinking, it's like, if I use these resources for this, this is discounted. If that card remains in play and that's discounted, then I can you can chain buys when you have these, discounts across different resources and not need gems as much as other players and just kind of like build wide and then upwards. Gray, on the other hand, says, look, I've reserved a bunch of cards. Some of those cards, maybe all those cards, require blue resources. I'm going to go upwards on blue. Not even to mention that 4 of the nobles like having blue resources. So happy to get into that color schema right there. So I'm liking Gray's position. Wei's position, I think, is one of the weaker ones. He does have 2 points right now, but just a little bit less infrastructure. And Levi is basically in the same seat as Wei, except for he has 3 points instead of 2. Gray's going to do another reserve here. He reserved the top one that is 6 greens, 3 reds, 3 blues. 6 greens are going to be hard to come by. I think he probably grabbed that one because other people have not been fighting for those greens very much, and those 3 blues are going to be trivial for him to do with his 2 blue infrastructure already. All right. Wei buys something. He buys that card from the bottom right because he has a discount of a black. That's a pretty cheap resource right there, getting him up to a 3rd card. We like that for Wei. That's good. We'll replace this. Levi's going to reserve this. Oh, 3rd row, column 4. I see you, Jim. That's how I'm supposed to figure out where we're buying things from. So Levi's going to buy things from the 3rd row, which is the top row, and the 4th column. He's going to reserve that black card that requires 7 reds. It's just a really, really good point ratio. Flipped out after Gray's turn, so he's happy to see that. And then, fascinatingly, this next one says, have a pile of blacks. You could score a bunch of points up here. So he might be looking at that one also. So blacks, reds, that's where Levi is probably going to be looking to get resources over the next some rounds. Red's a nice color to go into too, because it really seems like no one has been interested in grabbing red since the earlier part of the game. I feel like that stack has always been available to players. Green kind of in the close second. And then we got Michael here just kind of taking resources, rearranging his pile. He's saying, yeah, I got a lot of discounts, but I'm not really interested in cleaning anything up for anybody. And if you look at those cards at the bottom, All of them require at least a blue, which I'm not super interested in paying because I don't have any gems. So I would maybe be looking at that third card at the bottom row and like, 5 resources for a card, even though I'm discounted by 3. Do I really want to be doing this and clearing up this bottom row for these other players? Not so sure. Gray's going to take some resources as well. And then we get a purchase here. A purchase from his hand. So this, spending 2 white resources, must be one of the cheaper cards that Wei claimed earlier. And I guess he's looking at the board and saying, well, you know what? I don't really want to take a blue, white, and red as my gems, even though I've got space for gems, I think. And I need, or not need, but I'm going to want to play this card eventually. So he goes ahead and puts it out. I'm suddenly liking Wei's situation a lot more, right? He's now got as many cards out in play as anyone else, and 2 of them are in one color, making red purchases going to be a discount for him. Now, when I scan the board, there's a couple red cards kind of in the middle, but nothing that like really jumps out as an obvious winner. Levi's going to purchase that card I was just kind of talking poorly on, and I think part of the reason is I said he needs reds and blacks for the rest of the game. So there he goes, expanding his red infrastructure. Let me give you a look at his playboard for a moment there. All right, and Michael is capped out, so he's going to buy something. He's been planning this for a while. He acquired a bunch of resources. Looks like he's buying that 5 green, red 3 card in the middle there. 2 points. Continues to develop his black setup there. And now we're in this, I think both Levi and Michael are now kind of like in the black card gem situation. Just a smidge awkward for Michael and that Levi's in front of him, but a lot of these games at this level don't last long enough that grabbing nobles is a very real part of the game plan. They kind of end up getting a lot of points, and like maybe grabbing a noble is kind of the last thing that puts you to 15 points or over 15 points. But it is, I think, quite rare at this level that people grab a noble and it's, one of their points before having 10 points. All right, Gray purchases one of the cheap cards, or not so cheap card. He purchases a mid-level card. Looks like, 4 or 5. Oh, no. No. I am wrong. He purchases a 4-point card that he had reserved from hand at the beginning of the game. This was the thing that he was collecting all those blue discs for, reason why he wanted blue cards. He basically managed to get his way there. And that point-wise, I think rockets him into the lead. Do we have a point? Oh, yeah. It ties him in the lead. I guess Michael also has 5 points with a 2-2-1 situation, going a little bit kind of wider than Gray. So Michael at 5, Gray at 5, Wei at 2, Levi at 3. Those numbers, by the way, are next to their names if you're looking for where that is. All right. Wei did a reserve. Levi is going to grab some resources here. Looks like Wei reserved one of those top cards there too. I wasn't paying enough attention while I was catching up to totally see what it is, but you can tell, right? Like these players are really focusing on like, what of these top cards can I purchase at this stage of the game? They're saying, what resources do I have discounted? What resources are available to me? What resources are other players at the table not going to completely jam up? Let me reserve this card because it's a gold, which I'll be able to use at any point, however I please. And now I can work towards something that's going to give me victory points. This 15 is not many victory points to need. Michael's going to think about it and then grab some resources as well. Currently, he has 5 black gems, 3 gems, and 2 cards. So my guess is he's going to angle for that that one that I keep saying that people should angle for, right? That middle row one that is 3 whites and 5 blacks. And indeed, he takes a white. Green and a red for him, though. Not sure what those are specifically for. It's tough to play 4 players games at once. Gray's going to grab some greens. We know that he grabbed a card earlier that required a bunch of greens. I do remember that. So he's very narrow focused on what he's doing, right? He's kind of claimed the cards that he wants to, worth a bunch of points, and just sort of drills towards those. He's taken more of those double take actions, I think, than any other player. Wei following suit, saying, yep, I like the drill plan. I'm going to take 2 of these blues. Suddenly the board is very flush because we kind of had a couple rounds of people buying. And now we'll probably kind of go back into this flow of folks are going to take things. It's going to get really tight in maybe a round or so. And then there'll kind of be a rush again as people buy. Waiting for the opportune moment to buy the thing or see what else might come into play, buy the thing that is just best for them. Levi there just is at, well, I guess he's not at capacity. Oh no, he was at capacity. So he kind of is in a situation where he's got to buy. He's buying a card from hand. Looks like it's card that makes him black gem, and I think it's a little bit on the cheaper side, so I don't think it added any points. No, it did not. Here we see Michael reserving a card. I think this is only his 2nd reserve of the game. But looks like he's going to claim that top left card, that one with the really sick point ratio. 10 pieces for 5 points. Now, the one on the top right is a better ratio, right? 7 pieces for 4 points. But the difference between getting 7 of one color and then 7 and 3 of another color is pretty small for the 1 point. So you can really view it as like 3 gems for 1 point, which most people would be pretty happy to do. And I think that he has some suspicion that he'll have an easier time getting greens than reds. So that might weigh into the decision there. You'll notice that he didn't grab the top right one, which was a black gem card. I think because when you're going for these top row card, victory point situations, you're really not going to buy enough cards that you're going to scoop a noble. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to have enough resources to do that. So Gray here grabbing a green and some other things that he needs along the way. Notice his very narrow color set there. I think that the draws for him are working out quite nicely this game. He's got a nice smooth flow. Very, very narrow, very, very focused on what he's trying to do. Way here collecting lots of extra blue chips. I think he's got a card in hand that he's trying to build. And you'll notice that I think he had that card with the blue chips from earlier in the game. But Gray needed to build his kind of big whammy monster that required a bunch of blue chips in order for the market of blue chips to open up. And then Wei, being in turn order after him, gets to kind of say, okay, I'll grab this. I think this is one of these things about Splendor that is maybe a little counterintuitive. In many games, turn order wise, you want to avoid the strategy or the resources that the player preceding you in turn order to Wei's right as Gray is going to do, right? Because they're going to be taking those resources in front of you and grabbing them first. That is something that is kind of true in Splendor, but there's a flip side to that in this game, which is that the market is so tight, so controlled, that when the player to your right pays for that card, you then actually have the ability to immediately start soaking up those resources. So if you are contesting with the player to your right and they eventually spend those resources, you're the first one who gets a crack at getting those resources back again. On the other hand, suppose that you switch the positions, right? Wei is fighting for blues with Levi. Yes, he gets first crack at them, but if he was focusing on some other strategies along the way, and then Levi has some blues, and then Levi spends his blues, well, then Michael and Gray might soak up those blues before it gets back to Wei. So there's an irony in this game that you actually sometimes do want to get into the color of resources that the opponent on your right is going to want to take, or more accurately, spend. All right, Levi makes a purchase here, something from row 1, so we get a little cheapo. Okay, he's buying that red card from the bottom because it's just great for him. I mean, it's not great for him. I think it's fine for him structurally. Right, he's hit 2 reds, 2 blacks, and a white there. But it was very cheap. It only cost him 1 gem to do that because it was discounted by his other gems. Yeah, very similar infrastructures across these players. They either have 4 or 5 cards. Wei is a smidge behind in that race, sitting on 9 gems in hand, actually 10 because it's gold, and I've kind of cut off the bottom of the gold thing on the Excel sheet here. Levi with 4 and 1 gold. And then Michael, piles of resources, 5 things in play, 5 points. And Gray with piles of resources, 4 things in play, 5 points. So it seems like Michael and Gray are currently leading the pack, I would say. A little bit of that, I'm sure comes down to good play, but I would also argue is due to turn order. Growing earlier means that they had kind of the first crack at how they want to set up this game, play at the beginning, and games that, ask you to spend and collect resources, they roll with tempo. All right, Michael reserved that top right card, so he's going to be collecting tons of reds, tons of greens, and he's basically just hoping to turn his starting system into, hey, I need to score all of these points with the 5 and the 4 cards that he's reserved over just the last couple of turns here. And that card goes away. And then Gray is going to go ahead and buy a card from hand that's kind of a smattering of resources that was one of those top cards that jumping him up dramatically to 9 points. So he's got 5 cards in play, 9 points, nearly 2 points per card that he's played. Really, really narrow, really, really focused. He can't just be buying anything, though. I think the players in this game are paying a lot of attention to what it is that they need to build and how those resources are going to flow. I'm curious what they would say about how much they're paying attention to getting in each other's way. I mean, the pace that they're playing at, I feel like they're paying a lot of attention to that. But I am not, my brain is not wrapping all the way around it like theirs, I think, theirs are. All right, some resource grabs here. Levi taking 2 reds here. A little bit tough for Michael because, we saw him just take a card that requires reds. He requires reds and requires greens. So seeing another player in that color, not a great place for him to be in. He's got to find a way to spend the resources that he has. I still think he's going to buy that 5 black, 3 white card because it's going to be a red card now, which he does ultimately need. Nope, he doesn't agree with me. Instead, he's going to buy this card for just a gold. A singular gold. He's going to buy that white card? That's interesting. Why would he buy the white card? What do you need whites for, my friend? We'll have to see what he buys because he's got 2 gems already. I mean, there are a lot of cards in play right now that want white resources, but he just reserved cards to hand that require red and green. I wonder if he's getting a little splashed, a little distracted by the number of things that are out there. Or more likely, he's kind of keeping his options open if he can't get the resources that he does need, because he needs a lot of greens, a lot of reds, and he's only got, one discount on each of them and one of each of those resources. So to get all those resources is very unlikely. So he needs something to do in the interim. And maybe he's saying, hey, with these white resources, I can do exactly that. Gray's in a situation now where he has kind of done what he tried to do. He got himself to 9 points, and it's going to be kind of a slow move to break into the teens here, whereas I think the other players have a bit more resources and are going to buy some of the things. So Wei makes a purchase here from hand. Piles and piles and piles of blue resources are spent to bump him up to 6 points, putting him back into the contest here. Little unfortunate to see sort of his spread of resources. I mean, this is true for most of the players. Like, they have kind of spread out a little bit. Gray's kind of got the most pillared of resource bonuses here. Gray actually, I think, kind of possibly jockeying for that 3/3/3 noble. Wei with 2 reds, the only thing he could be looking at is that same 3/3/3 noble, but I think it very unlikely he's going to do that. Michael, 2 blacks and 2 whites here. Actually, maybe that's what he's looking at. He's looking at either the 4/4 noble or the 3/3/3 noble. Could be possibility. I think he's taking a lot of points, so he's biting off a lot of options. He's giving himself a lot of ways to get to 15 points. But that costs some efficiency, right? Like, leaving your options open is great for when things go clunky, but it is costing him some efficiency. Levi goes ahead and gets up to 7 reds. And Michael's going to buy here. He's finally going to buy the card that I was talking about for all this time. And it's a little bit cheaper now because he bought that white card last turn. The reason I was still surprised with last turn is now this leaves him with a white gem, which to me says he's thinking of using that white gem for something else in the future. Now, what else might he be looking at? Could be any number of options. Like, there's the card directly second in the second row. It's only 1 point. But 3 greens, 3 whites, 2 blacks. Gives him also a black discount, or a black towards that 4/4 noble if that's where he's headed. It's an option. He's got a lot of discounts for that one. The only thing that's ugly about that is I think he's supposed to be collecting greens for one of the cards that he reserved into his hand. It's also possible that he took that card with no actual intention of playing it and didn't want another player like Gray to his left, who's doing quite well and has some green discounts, to scoop up that card. Because at the end of the day, reserving a card gives you a gold. It's a wild. In Ticket to Ride, on your turn you can draw 2 cards, or you can draw 1 wild. In this game, you can buy 3 gems or 2 gems or 1 gem. But the 1 gem, the wild, comes with a reserve. But the thing that is different about this game is there's just a very limited number of resources. Having only 10 gems that you can hold in your pocket makes a really big difference. With a Ticket to Ride, you can have a hand of 40 cards, and that's actually kind of good strategy in that game, apparently. Not that I would know. Gray skips up a couple things. He's, like I said, not going to be doing anything for a little bit of a while here. All right, Wei executes a reserve here. And looks like he's going to reserve that new card. He might be doing that. Well, that's interesting. Why are you doing that? He's doing that because he's got 3 blacks already. 2 black discs and 1 black there. He's got the whites as well. I think we've got a little error on our sheet here that says we've got 2 whites and 1 red, but we've got 2 red cards and 1 white. So smidge off there, which is fine. We'll just keep that in mind. But either way, he's got discounts that match that. And then the thing that he really needs, the black gems. He's got most of already. So it's pretty easy for him to build going forward. So it's a nice, easy 2 points to scoop up. Is this a red that requires reds? It is. It sure is. I think Levi's going to build the expensive card in your hand, but this is actually one of those interesting points where you say, hold the phone. If I spend 6 reds, discounted by 2, so really 4 reds, on this card that is red, it's red, it pays for itself, and I can just start building up to that again. I don't know that other players are fighting me for reds. Not true. We know that Michael is going to maybe fight you for reds. But it's very tempting. He knew what he was going to buy. And now he's asking, do I actually buy that instead? I really like those 6 for 3s. Amazing ratio, certainly, with points 2 to 1, which we've already talked about. And a little bit more reasonable to build. Yep, he goes for it. That's a nice flip for him. Yeah, that really puts him, I think, points-wise, he was kind of stumbling. He's in last place, still technically in last place. That, I think, it gives him some nice options. 3 red discount. He can do something with that, something pretty cool. All right, here's our new card. Unfortunately, 3 reds doesn't do a whole lot else for him. I guess that top right card is pretty happy to see 3 reds. Also, he's got some discount on black. So that top right card actually is not looking terrible for Levi. $12 resources for 4 points, also pretty reasonable. So it's interesting because I was talking earlier about kind of players building up or building wide. And we see that Michael has basically built wide here, right? He's got 7 cards in play to Gray's 5. And his 7 cards are kind of in a handful of different places. Levi's got 6. Way's got 5 cards, it looks like. So yeah, Michael's just a little bit wider than the other players are. But even he still kind of grabbed these very high tier expensive cards. The plan, I think, for him to cross the finish line is with these expensive cards. Whereas Gray has basically said, going to the top, baby. We're going to the top. And it looks like he's going to buy himself a pretty discounted card in the bottom right here. Gives himself some additional blue power. That's good if he's going for that 3/3/3. That's one of those situations where that card is not well discounted for other players and not really that well costed. So no one else is that interested in scooping that up. If Levi is moving out of collecting reds, he could buy that bottom right card, but I don't think he is interested in doing that plan. Unfortunately for him, way in front of him took 2 reds. So he is building towards something bigger, maybe something that he took into his hand. We did know that he top decked something, and I also could have just missed something else that he was grabbing that required reds. Unfortunate for Levi, though, right? Because if he wanted to move back into reds, now's not really the time. He's kind of got to wait for Way to spend those resources down. I mean, there are still a bunch of reds available right now, but Way is going to grab some more on his next turn, very likely. So something for Levi to consider. And you also, I think, don't want to get into this weird situation where he takes reds, Way takes reds, and then Way is waiting to spend his reds because he needs to accumulate a certain amount. You can actually end up kind of locking each other out. Let me explain a little bit with kind of an example. Suppose that you and I, with no discounts whatsoever, both need 5 red gems. There are 7 red gems that are available. split amongst the players. Wait, that's not right. 9. 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I think what I said is right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's 7 red gems available. So we both want 5, right? You take 2, I take 2, then I take 1, then you take 1, because we're taking it along with some other things. And so now there's 1 left in play. We both have 3. And what are we going to do? Both of us can't build our card. So maybe we'll get there eventually with gold coins and stuff like that. But we have essentially competed for something in such a way that we have locked each other out. And that's fine if you're playing a 2-player game, but we're playing a 4-player game. So the 2 of us are killing each other. That's good for everyone else. I think I've got to assume that's what Levi's considering here. Thinks about it for ages, and then he's going to take blue, green, and red. Green's an interesting pickup for him. Maybe one of the cards that he picks up needs a couple greens because he sucks at using and spending greens. Unfortunately for him, his blacks and whites, I think, don't buy a lot of interesting stuff in play right now. Yeah, they really don't. I think certain of the color patterns are more matched with each other, and people who've played this game a lot more could tell you. I don't think the black, white, red is that often matched on the cards with each other. I could be wrong about that. I could be making up, but I think the ratios are not equal of what wants to work. I think black and white like working together. Maybe I'm just making that up. I always feel like I see green, reds, and blues together. Red, white, and green together. I feel like I see plenty of cards with red and black and red and white. I just can't think of many cards with red and black and white. So what's Michael stuck on here? He's got 4, 5, 6, 7 gems. He's looking at his hand. He is annoyed as heck because what I was just talking about is happening amongst 3 players who have split 2 reds, 2 reds, 2 reds amongst each other. Who's winning in that situation? Gray. And Michael wanted to get to, I think, 7 reds. He's got a gold. I can't tell if he has 2 or 3 cards in hand. Phantom one more time, Michael. He could, if he had 2 cards, he could reserve something and take a gold to get him to 6. Doesn't quite get him there, which sucks. So now he's asking himself the question, like, do I grab another red? That'll put me to 5 with the gold at 6. And then I'm just sitting and waiting for these other players to spend their reds. If they don't spend them, if they're waiting to spend them on something, you know, that costs 5 or 6, like we could be in this stalemate with each other forever. Not a situation you want to be in. That being said, you still have to advance your game plan. So does he have another option? I think the other card in his hand wanted a lot of greens. So maybe that. And he takes a blue here, which is the second blue. He's pretty bad at blue. He's got no infrastructure for blue. Is that for a card in his hand? I think that blue could be to open up the option of moving into the second row, 3rd card. And Gray sticks to his general game plan. He reserves a card from the top that costs a bunch of blue, a bunch of green, and a bunch of white. And that's a great card for him. He's already almost there to building that card. Yeah, he's really happy to see that have come around the table with the gold still left out there. That's a really, really good pickup for him. That puts him at 13 points, by the way, when he builds that, which he will do in like 2 turns. because he just needs a couple more resources to get there. But he's most of the way with blues. He's already there with greens, most of the way with whites. I think that gray has been moving towards that. I mean, he's mostly been taking resources except for last turn when he grabbed another blue there. And grabbing another blue, was well worth it because he knew he was going to be working towards this 6 blue guy. And no one else at the table really was, because gray essentially cornered the market on blue cards. Wei is buying a card from hand. What is this? He bought that blue card that he did earlier. So he's up to 8 points now. Yeah, there we go. And now he's got one of everything, the pure rainbow. I don't think it's generally strategically where you want to be. It's not bad. He can buy stuff. He doesn't want to be buying on bottom row stuff, but he can. So here's the math about why am I not buying constantly things in the bottom row? Suppose that you could buy something in the bottom row for 1 resource or maybe even for free. Those are different things, but let's just pretend for now that it costs 1 resource. That's great. You spend 1 resource for something that can give you a discount on something in the future. So it refunds itself essentially the next time you'd go and purchase something, but it costs you 1 of your actions. Because what you could have done instead of spending that 1 resource was claiming 2 or 3 resources. Now, if you're able to use those resources, that's great. If you're not, it's different. But assuming some efficiency there, you've spent 1 instead of gaining 3. Now, the 1 immediately rebates itself, so we'll call it 0. But you're a little bit behind on tempo there. So that sense of how close am I to the end of the game? Should I be spending my time building my infrastructure out? You have to ask yourself the question of how badly do I need this infrastructure? Gray said, I'll spend a resource to buy this blue thing because I know I'm buying blue things between now and then. And I'm also not too concerned about other people buying blue things between now and then. So continuing to corner that market there is advantageous. All right, Levi here is going to reserve that top right card, which wants to spend some reds just to continue to make Michael's life difficult in terms of getting reds. But also it's a gold for Levi, right? So it puts him to the magic number of 6 reds, which might really be what he's looking at. Okay, and then Michael is rich. So he's going to buy, oh, interesting. He's going to buy this red card from the bottom. Oh, sure. This is one of the advantages of being, widely leveraged. He can now use one of his blue gems to buy that second card in the bottom row, which gives him the 6th red. And then with his gold, that's his 7th red. So he can buy his thing, putting up to 11 points next turn. I think that's what he's looking at. Then he has to ask himself how he's getting the last 4. Going first is a nice advantage in this game. I think it's better than going in any of the later turn orders because you get to take the first crack at what the setup is. One thing that is a little bit of a disadvantage with it is if you ask yourself the question ooh, do I end the game right now at 15 points? Will other players go over to 16 or 17 points? Or should I wait to score extra points so I'll end the game with 17 or 18 points next turn? I think that's psychological though. Pretty much if you end the game, you can end the game, you should end the game, because if someone else could end the game, they would end the game, right? You do it, it's called a caterpillar problem, but if it's Levi's turn and he could get to 15 or 16, he will get to 15 or 16 because he knows that all the players preceding him did not get there. And then the game ends. Good for him. So if you are in Michael's position, you're asking, well, should I wait and score maybe 1 or 2 extra points next turn? Because if that's the case and one of the players is going to beat you now, if you go to end the game, they would have beaten you. They'll beat you by you not crossing the finish line. So you put pressure on them. If you can end the game, end the game. All right, Gray took some resources to get where we were talking to, and then Wei here purchases that blue card in the bottom right. So he's actually suddenly moved from no to 2 blues very, very quickly. He also has moved towards having the... Nope, Michael's still got the largest infrastructure in terms of quantity. And then we've got Levi buying something very expensive from hand, spending all these red resources that he works so hard to get. I think this is a 5-pointer. 11 points. Yeah, that's what he was working on for a while. And then Michael, who kind of a little awkwardly had to buy that red thing, is like, great, now there's a ton of reds in the game. Super. So that kind of tension that was there is a little bit interesting. The question is, does Michael, what's he got? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's at 9 gems right now. So if he took gems right now, he'd be discarding some gems, which is inefficient. But an argument could be made, depending on what he's trying to collect, that if he takes resources right now, by taking a red, he is saving himself a gold. And the gold might get him something else. So if really what he's trying to do is collect tons and tons of greens, then what he should do is take resources right now, because he could take a red, a green, and let's just say that's all he cares about. Red, a green, and then something else, which we're going to discard immediately because we need to discard down to 10. We can only keep one of the red or green. That's not actually true. We keep both the red and green and then discard something else we don't care about. Like, for instance, he's got a blue on hand. If he's not planning on using the blue for anything, he can discard it. It's not efficient. It's ugly to essentially just go up one net value, but it shuffles his chips in such a way that now he has 7 reds, 4 greens. Having the 7th red saves him a gold, which means his 4 greens is a phantom 5 greens. And all of a sudden he's a lot closer to getting the number of greens that he needed. So it's not always bad to draw chips when you are at 9 or 8 or even 10 sometimes. If things... One thing I really respect about the design of this game and the way this kind of like flow happens, particularly at this level, is that it's not just about how many resources, it's about what resources are. And you need to be really, really cognizant of what you are claiming. And here we go. We see him grabbing some resources. Oh no, he's buying something. That's what my command thing tells me, he's buying something. If I knew nothing about this game, which I'm not as good as any of these players, I'm sure, at this game, I could tell you right now that Wei is losing, because he was just sitting like this, and that body language to me saying is that he feels out of it, I think. Which doesn't seem like it's that far behind. But I can also see, he's got quite a wide plan, but not necessarily something he's directly leveraging that into. I don't remember what cards he's reserved in hand, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe he's just a very, very calm, casual fellow. Michael's very intense. Michael's got it. He's got it figured out. Okay, so he was thinking about taking resources. He was just having one of these turns where it's like, I could go this way or another, and he's going to decide that he wants to spend. He doesn't want to dither about it. He's happy to spend the gold, and that'll score him 4 points, putting him up to 11 as well. And suddenly, we've got a lot of people who are just like in punting distance here. Gray says, look, I've got 13. I need 2 more. So what he does is he looks at the middle row, he sees which ones are 2 more, and that card right there, that's 2 greens, 1 white, 4 blues. Guess what I have, ladies and gentlemen? Discounts on blues, discounts on greens. That's a really, really cheap card for me to play. That's going to put him at 15 exactly. If the other players are paying as much attention as I expect, they know they're on a very real clock right now. Great. Looks like Wei is buying something from the lowest row. Doesn't cost him anything. Super. Yeah, he just bought for an extra blue card. Maybe he's trying to angle towards taking a noble. 3 blues gives him a couple options. He's got like no gems on hand. I think he's angling for noble. It's a fast turn too. I think he knows he's dead. I'm gonna stop reading into it. All right. So Levi here, he's very focused as well, right? Like if we, oops. It's a problem with running one thing off one computer and one thing off another, right? 3 reds, 3 blacks, and a white. And in terms of the cards here, they had 3 victory points, 3 victory points, 5 victory points. He has made 7 cards, 3 of which were big whammy cards, and the other 4 are there to build these pillars. He has built a very nice, straight up the column strategy here that I think is, it's as focused as Gray's plan is, right? The two of them are just very, very narrow, very, very focused in what it is that they've been doing. Michael and Wei just have a lot more flexibility in their infrastructure depending on what cards come out. The problem with kind of like Levi or Gray's strategy can be if cards don't come out that are favorable to you, what are you going to do? And so that's something that I think Levi is looking at the board right now and saying, I've got black discounts, I've got red discounts. I need 4 more points. What does that do for me? Well, he can look in the top right, but I also need a bunch of greens and I also need a bunch of whites. Well, I have some whites, so I need some greens. So I could look at that top right one. Oh, wait, but that only scores me 3 points. I really want something that does 4. I could do 3 and 1, but I don't see anything that does 1 for me either. Well, maybe that first card in the second row, because I basically buy that for nearly free, right? It cost me just the 1 white. That's viable. But I did need that white for that card in the top right. So to build that card in the top right, I need 2 blacks, 2 greens. And to build the other card I mentioned that's 1 point, he needs 1 additional white over what, because he would have spent on his white gems. So if he can get 2 blacks, 2 greens, and a white, and then buy those 2 cards, that's 4 turns that he can win in. Puts him to 15. Gray, on the other hand, let's see where he's at. I can't, how many? He's got 6 blues. And what was the card? I think the card that he had was a 6-3-3. Yes. And then the next one was like a 4-2-1. So he's going to play, pick up. Oh, no. Play, pick up, play. So I think it's actually 3 turns for Gray. I think he's going to be a turn faster than Levi. I think. All right, Michael buys something. What does he buy? Row 2, column 2. Huh. Just spends out some gems to score a point here. Oh, it's his 4th black card. It's his 4th black card. So he's thinking if I can get to 4 blacks and 4 whites, that's 4 points on the noble. Because I think that's a 4-point noble. Oh, it's a point itself. Even if it's a 3-point noble, he's good. Where's he going to get his other whites from, though? Yeah, the other whites are not obvious there. Gray is going to then buy the... Oh, clever, of course. Gray buys the 4-2-1 card first. Because he doesn't want players to block out his blues. Figures he can grab some whites, but he can also just reserve next turn. Yeah, he's 2 turns away from winning here. Wei just buys a green. He's looking for that blue, green, red noble. Okay, so Wei's toast. I mean, he's maybe going to get to 12 by the end of the game. Levi's counting it. He's trying to break parity here. He's like, how do I mess this up? Row 2, column 1. That's the one we talked about. That's 1 pointer. It's a cheap 1 pointer. Man, I was struggling to keep up with their plans at the beginning, but I feel like now I've got it all figured out. And he buys it now. I think maybe because he wants to see what comes out, or because he needs to, like, maybe there's certain resources he needs. No, all the resources he wants are available in play. He could have picked up that turn. Maybe he's got something else, or maybe he's looking at one of the cards in his hand to score the last 3 points. That's entirely possible. Or maybe he's praying for a 3-pointer in the middle row. That could be option 2. Ugh, Michael, that was like a, I feel like I'm dead hand flip. I think he sees it too. I think they all see it. Oh, did I miss it? I thought gray needed another turn. I must have missed the cost on that card. Maybe it costs some. No, I just missed that he could buy it. I didn't realize that he had enough. Take. It's just bye-bye. I was just a turn off. Did not realize. There he is. That's a 15. Way. Doesn't even get that. And Levi's going to end with taking some stuff. And that's it. Levi, I think, is talking about where he's going to head next. Yeah, so gray ends up coming up on top here. I think that another round or two needed for Levi and Michael to cross the finish line here. I don't think either of them were doing it on their next turn. I don't think either of them have 3 points on their next turn. So gray with a little bit of a comfortable victory here. Not by a huge margin or anything, but he crossed the line right there, and really he played 4 and 5 point cards, right? Like he really just kind of like narrowed in. I think the cards that he played were 5, 4, 4, and 2 points, if I remember correctly. And he early on just like nabbed those blue cards, took advantage of it. Cool. That's the end of Splendor, y'all. I hope you had a good time watching this video with me. We played a little bit of catch up at the beginning, but I think we managed to follow pretty well. I think Splendor is a neat little game. If you have not tried this kind of like reserving cards at the top strategy, give it a shot. I also think that like reserving cards in the middle, if they're the ones that like Levi was claiming, are entirely good as well. Those 2 and 3 point cards that cost all the same color are quite powerful. And then, I'm only so good at this game. And I got beat in the second round of this by someone who went really wide and then just was able to buy everything. They ended up actually getting multiple nobles over the course of the game. And I just could not get out my expensive stuff early. And I think in part of that was because myself and another player were bumping heads with each other. So you got to pay attention to what kinds of resources other people at this table want, and take advantage of that. Hope you all are enjoying your Splendor. Thanks for being here with Phoenix Gaming, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Cheers.